Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video number 263, the closest thing to time travel. This is actually something I was thinking the other day, and I've touched on it in brief before in video, but I've never made really a dedicated video about this. Which is that I've had a weird experience. I grew up in a small village called Woodstock, Vermont, not the place where the concert was held. It's a little tourist village of about 1,400 people. It's very, very small. It's one of those little villages where, because there's nothing else to do, like the neighborhood kids hang out in front of the library and stuff like that. So it's sort of that sub-small town America. It's not even small town America because it's not even a town. And it's kind of a fun place, and during the tourist season it explodes with growth to the point where there are 5,000 or 6,000 people there at any given time. It is extreme. It's hellishly busy. Trust me, if you go there during leaf peeper season, be prepared to spend an hour going from one end of the village to the other, which normally takes 5 minutes, because of how choked the traffic is. They refuse to widen the main road, mainly because there's so many historical structures. I don't think they can physically make it work, but it can be pretty nice. It's got an outsized number of shops, although they're usually expensive simply because of the tourism. So like for locals there, mostly a small village like that will have like 3 or 4 shops. Instead, you have several streets that are lined with everything. It's got a lot of restaurants. And largely, the main structure of Woodstock hasn't really changed at all for the most part since I was a kid. I hadn't gone back for a very long time. And then I went back briefly when my grandfather died. We stopped over there. That was in Bridgewater. And then we came back through Woodstock. And then after that, I think it had been another half decade. And then more recently, I went when my wife was actually in Rutland with me. And so we went to Woodstock for the day, and it was interesting. I had ice cream and shit. Went to the Mountain Creamery, by the way, where my dad was a head chef. You should definitely eat there. Check it out if you go through Woodstock. Definitely got the best food. They probably shut down right now, but they probably curbside delivery, I'd imagine. Anyway, other than the fact that there are a few new shops and a few things have changed hands, and like the yarn shop is no longer in existence. I guess they went out of business or it got sold or something. Other than that, it looks basically the same. It's basically the same as it was in the 1990s. I think the biggest change overall that doesn't involve the playground of the elementary school, which they've made, it looks like World War I trenches for some reason. I'll get into that in a separate video. I happen to think that it's weird how they've done it myself, but it's just me. I don't know. As long as people are getting physical activity once a day. Anyway, other than that, the biggest change is that the meters around the green are no longer the old manual type. You can actually use a card and shit now. They're like electronic, which is, by the way, a good change, I think, overall. I can't even imagine how much money Woodstock makes from tourists spending their, like $1 an hour for their parking space. It's kind of inordinate, but it's pretty funny. Anyway, when I crossed over into Woodstock, basically when you cross the bridge by the theater, going east from the Rutland area, and then turning north into Woodstock proper, northeast, it was like stepping back in time. Even like the atmosphere changed as soon as I entered Woodstock in the more proper sense. It changed, even the sky looked different, if that makes any sense. Things felt different. There was a weird sort of permeating energy, at least to me. Because it hasn't changed, it's like stepping back in time to the 1990s. Other than the fact that everyone's on a smartphone and you've got, smart meters and stuff, it hasn't really changed. Yeah, even the storefronts, it's like the cracks in the sidewalk look exactly the same. Like I can practically remember the fucking sidewalk tiles and shit. Nothing's really changed. And it's a weird sort of thing, and I almost feel sad for people that were raised in an area that's sort of like really hip and changing constantly, because I don't think they'll ever really truly be able to have that experience. Like if I were to go back to southern Texas, which is having a housing boom, massively exploding population down in the Rio Grande Valley, if I were to go back to Weslaco, having not been there for more than 10 years now, it probably doesn't look the same. Maybe the downtown of it, the main street of Weslaco would, give me deja vu. But other than that, I'm sure things progress fairly quickly there. I was in the Tampa area. I'm sure in a city like that, I'm sure a lot of things have changed. I lived briefly in Springfield, Mass. Again, reasonably developed city, a lot of turnover in businesses, a lot of new developments. I'm sure that it's changed some. With Woodstock, fuck, the same people run the same businesses and have for decades. It's almost like it's incapable of changing. Have you ever seen Stephen King's It? And one of the things is, like, they come back to this, spoiler alerts, by the way, this group of kids that was raised in this little town, they go back to fight, the evil clown demon, or I can't remember exactly what it was truly supposed to be, a demon, I guess, or something. And some things have changed. They're constantly having, like, flashbacks and shit, but then, like, what in the movie, at least, one of the characters there's pissed off because the Paramount went out of business. And it's like, that is sort of the thing. It's like, and you, by the way, you notice the changes that have happened more. Like, one of the first things I noticed was the fact that the meters look different because nothing else did, in contrast to literally everything else. The same bushes growing in the same yards that they have the whole time since I was a kid. The same everything. It felt weird. It felt very strange. It's sort of, in the one hand, it's sort of a lonesome longing feeling, like a nostalgic feeling, which I'm not given over to nostalgia, so probably blunted in my case anyway. And then in the other sense, sort of a wholesome, relaxed feeling, like, oh, I remember everything here. You're completely at ease. Because even if you haven't been there in a long time, you just sort of get the way things go. It was funny because I had one funny moment where I used to raise hell. I was known as one of the main hellions of Woodstock at the school and everywhere else. I was the kid that threw rocks at the birds. I was the kid that hit trees with a stick. I was the kid who laughed loudly and burned ants in the green with the magnifying glass and stuff. Yes, that was me. By the way, to any Woodstock natives familiar with my material, I was that person. I was that kid in that generation. And it was funny because the same dude runs, I'm not going to say which shop it is. One of the very touristy shops has a lot of doodads, nods, and ends along the main street. Went in there. Liz wanted to go get, I think earrings, if I remember correctly. It was funny because the dude even looks the same, other than having a little more gray hair now. He didn't realize who I was. And I remarked, actually, thereafter, he probably would have had a heart attack if he knew who I was. Actually, I remember buying a laser pointer in that shop. And this is just funny stick story, I guess, at this point. I remember buying a laser pointer there, and I actually got a visit from a cop at one point because I was shining it out the window into the neighbor's window, and they thought it was a rifle. They thought, I don't know why they would assume that, because, I mean, again, it's a little tiny village. They thought someone was aiming a rifle at them and freaked out and called the cops. And then, of course, my dad took the laser pointer away. I never saw that again. The cats did, but I didn't because I didn't know where it was stashed. It's problematic. But yeah, it was the closest thing to time travel that I can imagine. It was like, I even felt different in a physiological sense. I started feeling like I was, 10 again or something. It's a really weird feeling. If you've never experienced it, like let's say you've moved away from your hometown, try going back for a weekend. It's a really weird. It really is an occult experience, though, because it doesn't really make sense that it would affect you maybe that much, because I don't really think about my hometown, so to speak. I consider Rutland to be my hometown, and I definitely prefer it over Woodstock. It's got more to do. I like the culture more. It's more laid back. It's more working class, too. There's a very strict delineation between the poor of Woodstock and the rich. Yeah, most people there, they're either at least in the upper middle class, like if you own a shop or an actual home, or you're pretty poor and you're sort of working a service job. There's not a whole lot of a real middle class there. Because of by structure, and it's not expanding or anything like that. They're very stringent with zoning. Like McDonald's spent 20 years trying to get in there, and they never allowed it. By the way, I support that. But anyway, very strange, very odd. Again, make sure to go visit the Mountain Creamery. They have the best food. The butcher shop has good shit in it too. Actually, a lot of the food there, trust me, it's spectacular. It's like an oasis of extremely weird food. Like there's like a Tex-Mex place. There are 5 or 6 hipster cafes now, actually. I don't know how they don't outcompete one another. Got a cappuccino there, and it was like, half of a gulp. That's when you know that it's a pricey place. I think I'll take a regular cup of joe, actually. Not exactly given over to fancy tastes. Yeah, but anyway, it looks basically like the 90s. It's like stepping back in time. You should definitely go check it out. It's better to be a tourist in Woodstock than it is to be a resident, by the way. Unless, again, if you're wealthy, if you own a business or something, you can clean up. There are a couple of empty business fronts there to anyone who's like a millionaire investor. If you can find out a business that you think tourists will like and you can brand it very much Vermont-y, you'll make money hand over fist, like, gee, they just retire already. By the way, disclaimer, I'm not actually giving you financial advice, I'm just joking. I'm talking out the side of my mouth. That's about all. Peace out.